Hey everybody, it is Wednesday, May 7th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. It's Conclave Day. I'm Moshe Nunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. And we'll be like you today, like the rest of the world, wondering what is happening inside the Sistine Chapel, Jill.
That's right. Today begins the conclave to elect the new pope. Moshe, I finally watched the movie Conclave this weekend, or at least most of it. And it definitely gives a lot of insight into this very secretive, centuries-old ritual. 133 Catholic cardinal electors will be locked inside of the Vatican's Sistine Chapel. They'll be selecting the new pope. Now, interestingly, in order to become a pope, a candidate need only be Catholic and male.
There's like 600 million of those around the world.
And they also need to get 2/3 of the votes plus one.
That's going to be more challenging for most Catholic males around the world. That's why they typically elect from themselves. The cardinals get together there. This is a tradition, Jill, that goes back nearly 1,000 years to the 13th century. That's when the conclave started. So the Catholic Church goes way farther back than that, like another 1,000 years. The problem that they had in the year 1268 and 1269 was that it took them more than 1,000 days to decide on a pope. So the townspeople got so annoyed, they literally locked the cardinals in a room. There were 18 at the time, and said, "We're locking you in. You will have to come up with a pope more quickly because it's taking you like nearly 3 years here to decide on a pope." So that's where the tradition of the conclave begins. Notably, since about 1900, it takes them about 2-3 days to elect most of the recent popes. They will be meeting today secretively. No cameras, no audio, nothing. They take a vow of secrecy in terms of what is discussed inside the Sistine Chapel. Typically, the first round is not conclusive. So they will take a vote at the end of today. And then starting tomorrow, they'll have 2 votes in the morning, 2 votes in the afternoon until they come to a decision. Now, after each round, the ballots are burned if there's not 2/3. Speaking of burning, that's how we know whether they voted for a new pope or whether they haven't decided on one. Black smoke, everybody, no pope. White smoke, pope. They used to use natural things to try to make a fire or smoke that was more white or more black. It got confusing, so they now use chemicals that assure everyone that that's black smoke or white smoke. So again, if you're betting on average based on the past 150 years, it'll take them probably by the end of the week to do this, but we'll see. We'll see what they come up with. There's a lot of things at stake here in terms of the future of the church. Are they going to go with a more progressive pope, a la Francis, when it comes to LGBT, women, other issues? Are they going to go with a more conservative pope that focuses on doctrine? We're not going to know much. No reporting inside there, Jill. We're going to just have to speculate based on the result.
Yeah, no sources deep inside the Sistine Chapel.
3 cardinals tell me.
Yeah.
3 anonymous cardinals. I don't
With
know. Everybody
knowledge
else
of the
these
situation.
Days. No. They if they're caught leaking anything or discussing what happens inside the Sistine Chapel, major ramifications for them. Like they're forced out of the church. So no incentive there for these guys to talk to us or anybody else.
Okay, now to the headlines. Canada and the United States kiss and make up. Kind of. What happened when Canada's new prime minister met President Trump at the White House. More on the delays at Newark Airport, what we know about the minute or so when air traffic control lost all communications with airplanes, and a slight reprieve for travelers who still don't have real IDs yet. Overseas, a truce between the United States and the Houthis. And as expected, India launches military operations against Pakistan, what we know about it. And Ukraine launches drone attacks against Russia. Back in the U.S., the Supreme Court allows President Trump to implement a ban on transgender people in the military, at least temporarily. And the Trump administration asks a court to dismiss the abortion pill case. What to make of that? And finally, a man bitten by 200 snakes helps scientists create a super antivenom.
That's one way to do it, Jill.
Plus, Moshe is on this day in history.
Your clue today, you can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Okay, a reset of sorts for the United States and Canada. It comes amid historic tension between the neighboring countries and the usual friends over tariffs and President Trump's insistence that Canada become America's 51st state. On Tuesday, President Trump hosted Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, at the White House. It's their first meeting since Carney won the election. in some ways, thanks to his tough talk against President Trump. Well, fast forward a couple of weeks, the men were face to face at the White House, with Trump once again repeating his desire for Canada to become the 51st state. Taking questions in the Oval Office, Carney said, "Not gonna happen." Take a listen.
I'm a real estate developer at heart. When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country. When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person, but when I looked at that beauty, I said, that's the way it was meant to be. But we're not going to be discussing that unless somebody wants to discuss it.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together.
Trump then said, never say never.
Yeah, Jill, Carney was trying his best during that Oval Office meeting to try to be as civil as possible. I think a lot of folks, foreign leaders, have taken a lesson from the Zelensky Oval Office meeting from a couple months back. And so even though literally you have Donald Trump sitting next to the Prime Minister of Canada being like, you should be our state. It'd be great. Never say never. And he was like, well, we're not for sale. I've talked to the owners of Canada, meaning voters in Canada. We will never be for sale. And so, he tried his best there with the response, because remember, these leaders have to go back to their country and the people have to say, like, well, did you stand up for our country? But at the same time, you're in this unique situation in the Oval Office with Trump, who, again, with that Zelensky situation, doesn't respond well to people fighting with him. So there were points where Carney was like going to get in a word and Trump didn't make eye contact, was going to the next question. And so Carney tried his best. And it appears he was successful so far with that first round of talks.
In general, there was just this much softer tone. It was polite. Carney saying the talks were productive and positive. A reporter asked Trump if Carney's rejection of his statehood idea made trade talks between the U.S. and Canada more difficult. Trump said no, it did not. He said that we are going to be friends with Canada regardless of anything. Carney called Trump a transformational president.
Yes, and Trump called Canada a very special place. And again, said the concession I want is I just want friendship. Canada's like, yeah, that's sort of what we've been offering you all along. Nonetheless, it appears Trump, we have heard that he preferred Carney here, which is one of the reasons why he knew the effect he was having in recent months was hurting the Conservative Party in Canada and their candidate. And it appears here that, he sees a counterpart here that he said literally in the meeting yesterday that he respects much more than the previous Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who he used to call Governor Trudeau. So I noticed that even in the language Trump has used on social media, he's not calling Carney Governor Carney yet, implying that Canada's a state and states have governors. We took that to be a softer tone, despite the fact that he says he still wants to annex Canada. Nonetheless, unlike that meeting with Zelensky earlier this year, where Trump effectively threw Zelensky out of the White House before they could even have lunch. They did have lunch yesterday, Carney and Trump. They discussed a number of things: Iran, China, the war in Ukraine, as well as the issues between the countries, including fentanyl coming across the border. We have mentioned there's very small amounts of fentanyl coming across the northern border versus the southern border, but still it's an issue that Trump wants resolved more. They have talked about creating a fentanyl czar up in Canada. That's something Trudeau had promised. And so they're continuing those conversations. Canada has acknowledged that drugs are an issue there as well, coming in from the outside. Nonetheless, the softer tone, still a remarkable contrast, Jill. This was Carney a week ago at his victory rally after clinching the prime ministership.
America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. These are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us.
So new week, new town, new country, or you could just say election rhetoric versus governing rhetoric, understanding that Carney sort of had to speak that way in order to get elected. And now he's got to go, one-on-one in person with Trump. And it requires a different tone, different language from both parties Trump is very focused on the trade deficit with Canada, meaning Canada buys less things than we buy from them. That trade deficit, Trump constantly refers to $200 billion. It appears that Trump is sort of adding some things up there, including U.S. military protection, part of NORAD. The trade deficit literally is about $40 to $50 billion. And that's mainly the fact that we buy a bunch of Canadian oil. That's the differential there. But given the tariffs, Canadian exports to the U.S. actually dropped in March. Its exports to other countries increased. So it looks like these tariffs are going to take care of this trade deficit. But it does mean that Canada now has to look for the different markets to sell its goods.
Speaking of trade, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent predicted that the U.S. could announce a trade deal with some of America's largest trading partners as early as this week. At a House Appropriations Committee hearing, Bessent defended President Trump's tariffs. He said the U.S. was in negotiations with 17 of 18 very important trading partners on tariffs. He didn't specify which ones. He said the U.S. has not started talks with China, which currently has a 145% tariff on all exports coming from the country.
Yeah, 17 of 18 is pretty good, but that one, a big deal, given that it's China, given how much trade we do with them. Trump has implied talks were beginning. Bessent said there haven't been talks yet. Nonetheless, both parties here are going to have to be talking soon, given the economic ramifications of those tariffs. Bessent discussed trade deficits. The majority of the U.S. trade deficits, the significant ones, are with about 15 countries. Those are the major trading partners in that group that we're negotiating with. Bessent said that the majority of those trade deficits will be resolved by the end of this year. And he said that these tariffs have forced these trading partners to come to the U.S. with trade offers. He says the trade tariff policy has been effective here in getting the U.S. to get better deals. We shall see whether the promise of trade deals as soon as this week comes to fruition.
Now to another story we've been following all week, those massive delays and cancellations at Newark Airport. They're going on about 10 days already. And we're also learning more about the incident last Monday when air traffic controllers responsible for the traffic at Newark Airport lost radar and communications with planes under their control for anywhere from about 60 to 90 seconds. That happened last Monday, April 28th. So this means that they were essentially doing their jobs blind. Here is some of the audio where the tower tells one plane that the radar is down.
9674 approach. 74, radar contact lost. We lost our radar. So just stay on the arrival and maintain 6,000.
So again, what you just heard here was an airplane trying to contact air traffic control, and air traffic control saying they basically had no way to see where the airplane was. So they needed to just maintain that altitude of 6,000 feet. Pretty scary.
Scary for the pilot, yes, and scary for these air traffic controllers, Jill.
So much so that in response to just how stressful that incident was, 5 air traffic controllers have gone on special government trauma leave. It's for 45 days to help them recover from the stress. And because there is already a shortage of air traffic controllers, that is only compounding the problem.
Yeah, they were already short controllers. At times, we've told you about how sometimes controllers have to manage multiple planes at the same time. And, ideally you have one controller on one plane. We should say at the time of that incident, again, this outage, communications and radar, reportedly between 60 and 90 seconds, 15 to 20 flights were being controlled by Newark controllers during that outage. So 90 seconds, they basically didn't have comms or radar on up to 20 flights. You have about 77 flights going in and out of Newark every hour. And so basically there were, a handful of flights that were literally headed to land, as well as those just taking off during that time period. And, to those of you who have questions as to why do these guys need 6 weeks off from this stressful incident? Just keep in mind that our air traffic controllers already short-staffed, already doing more than what they're supposed to do, working 10-hour plus days, not allowed in many cases to take time off for very lengthy periods of time, working 6-day weeks. So I think this was just the straw that broke the camel's back here. And so you have that on top of old technology. We told you about this on yesterday's podcast, copper wires, floppy disks, technology from the 1970s that they're forced to use here. The transportation secretary saying, though, there was no immediate danger of plane collisions thanks to onboard GPS and communication devices that allow the pilots to monitor other air traffic. So there are systems, backup systems here in case the tower has an issue like this. Jill, one thing that many people are asking is like, well, has this happened before and we just don't know about it? I don't know what to tell you folks, but I will say that this technology, sadly, this antiquated technology, is not unique to Newark Airport. It is being used by airports across the country here. And this is why they've really put the focus on getting new technology into the air traffic control towers and radar centers. That is something that Sean Duffy, the Transportation Secretary, has said is going to get renewed focus here. It's notable you see various senators and members of Congress outraged about this, but it's been Congress that's been delayed in approving all of this. And this goes back multiple administrations. So that's that situation as far as technology is concerned. Meanwhile, as far as Newark Airport's concerned, United's canceled a bunch of flights going forward. Delta's canceled a bunch of flights going forward. And they believe that that will now help the folks that are still in the control tower manage the situation with fewer flights. Nonetheless, I did look up yesterday the airport in the country with the most amount of delays and cancellations. Newark, for the first time in a few days, was not number one. They were number two, but that's because there was a bunch of bad weather in Dallas. So Dallas was number one, DFW, followed by Newark.
So it's not that things got better at Newark. They just got worse in other places.
They got worse in Dallas due to weather. Yes.
All right, and a quick follow-up to that story about real IDs, which were supposed to be required as of today, Wednesday, the real ID deadline. But Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she said yesterday that people who don't have real IDs will still be allowed to fly. She told a congressional panel that if somebody lacks an identification that complies with the real ID law, they might just be diverted to a different line. They might have an extra step, but they will be allowed to fly. Meaning if you don't have your passport or a real ID, definitely allow for a little bit more time at the airport.
Yeah, and for those of you asking what's the point of real ID, the point is that going back to 9/11, it was easy to fake IDs. Real ID allows for better verification on your state ID. That's why the passport's allowed, because it has this extra verification level, and the real IDs at each state level make it, with holograms and all these various security devices, much more difficult to replicate. But it appears for now, there won't be a major upheaval at the airport this morning, Jill.
Time for the speed read from the Wall Street Journal. President Trump said Tuesday that the U.S. had reached a truce with the Houthis in Yemen and would suspend its airstrikes there, claiming that the militants would no longer target ships navigating Middle Eastern waters. During that Oval Office meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister, he said, quote, "I will accept their word and we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis effective immediately. They just don't want to fight and we will honor that."
Yeah, he used the word capitulated to describe the Houthis yesterday. He said they just couldn't take it anymore. We should note that the U.S. has bombed about 800 targets in the past couple months there. It comes as the Houthis first announced back in October of 2023 that they were going to target international shipping, Israel and its allies, in a way to help Hamas. Keep in mind, the Houthis are supported, funded, armed, largely in part by the Iranians. Their motto, we've told you this in the past, the Houthi motto is "God is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews." That's their flag there, the Houthis. So it appears, despite literally in their motto saying death to America, they've told Trump they want to take a break from death to, at least that part of their motto. Jill, it's that next part, death to Israel, curse be upon the Jews. It appears that isn't going to be ending anytime soon. They've escalated their ballistic missile attacks on Israel in recent weeks, and they were actually able to strike the airport in Tel Aviv, at least the outskirts of the airport. The missile defense system in Israel, the U.S. defenses, Israel defenses, didn't get one of the missiles. They've been pretty good so far. Not this week. The Israelis responded, as we told you yesterday, on Houthi targets. It appears the U.S. didn't coordinate this with the Israelis. The reporting out of Israel is that they were taken by surprise here, that Trump says that the Houthis have called it quits on America. It does not appear that's going to end anytime soon when it comes to Israel. Now, Oman, a neighboring country there in the Arabian Peninsula, says it helped mediate this truce. So no surprise here. It does come as the U.S. is negotiating right now with the Iranians, trying to strike a nuclear deal there. And so maybe this is part of it. It would not surprise me, given that the Houthis do take their orders in large part from Tehran.
Staying overseas with breaking news out of South Asia from the Associated Press, multiple loud explosions were heard in several places in Pakistan and Pakistani Kashmir on Wednesday. India said it had attacked, quote, terrorist infrastructure in 9 sites. Pakistan is now vowing to respond to the attacks. India fired missiles across the border into Pakistani-controlled territory in at least 3 locations, killing a child and wounding 2 others. This is according to Pakistani security officials. India said it was striking infrastructure used by terrorists. The strikes came amid soaring tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbors over last month's attack on tourists in the Indian-controlled portion of the Kashmir border region. India has blamed Pakistan for backing the militant attack, which Pakistan has denied. However, Pakistan does have a history of supporting terror groups that have committed previous attacks in the disputed Kashmir region.
So what's interesting here is the Indian Defense Ministry said that these were pinpointed attacks on these 9 sites. They believe they targeted areas where terrorist attacks were planned. And they made a point of saying that our actions, this is the Indian government here, have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory in nature. No Pakistani military facilities have been targeted. India has demonstrated considerable restraint in our selection of targets. Now, the Pakistanis are like, nope, we're going to get revenge on you. This is unacceptable what you guys did. And this is always the concern here between 2 nuclear-armed countries, is the Indian government felt obligated to respond. A terror attack happened. They murdered several dozen Hindus, purposely targeted by Islamic militants there. And they are able to draw a dotted line, maybe not a straight line, to the Pakistani government. So India felt obligated to respond. They were very strategic in this response. This is something we, talked about in the Iran-Israeli exchange, which is like you can pick how you want to respond. And you can respond to say, well, we got to respond because we're a sovereign country and we got to respond to these things. But we don't have to go with a response at a 10. We could go to response at a 3, at a 4, at a 5. And then does that mean that the other country has to counter respond? And then what does it end as opposed to escalating things? So it appears the Indians tried to go with a lesser response, tried to reinforce that. Pakistani said they're going to have to counter respond. But then will they counter respond in a smaller way? We shall see. Just background here, Kashmir, it's a border region there between India and Pakistan. There have been fights over this going back to the split between India and Pakistan back in the late 40s when Pakistan was set up as the Muslim majority country, India as the Hindu majority country, Kashmir in the middle. Pakistan has a claim to a part of Kashmir that India controls, and they have fought multiple wars over this now going back nearly 80 years.
Staying abroad, all 4 international airports around Moscow temporarily suspended flights Tuesday as Russian forces intercepted more than 100 Ukrainian drones fired at almost a dozen Russian regions. 9 other regional Russian airports also temporarily stopped operating as drones struck areas along the border with Ukraine and deeper inside of Russia.
Yeah, notably, Putin called for a 3-day ceasefire. Ukraine said that's a bunch of nonsense. We're not engaging this. We want a real ceasefire here. Why does Putin want the ceasefire? Well, it is a holiday in Russia, Victory Day in World War II. He's going to have big parades here. He's got the Chinese president, the Brazilian leader, among others, gathered in Moscow. And it appears Zelensky and the Ukrainians didn't want foreign countries to help Putin celebrate here. And we're sending a message yesterday.
From NBC News, the Supreme Court on Tuesday allowed President Trump to implement his ban on transgender people serving in the military. The justices granted an emergency request from the Trump administration to lift a block a lower court judge had put in place, blocking the policy while litigation continues. The 3 liberal justices dissented. The decision is a loss for the 7 individual transgender service members, led by the lead plaintiff, Emily Schilling, a Navy commander who had sued to block it.
So in recent years, the Supreme Court has ruled that a federal civil rights law from the 1960s does protect gay and transgender workers, but that was a case not related to the military here. There have been a lot of cases here on the emergency docket because Trump has signed so many executive orders. There have been so many lawsuits related to the executive orders. So in the meantime, they're allowing this policy to go into effect as the case moves up through the court system. We should note a lower court judge did say that this was nothing to do with military readiness, but this policy has everything to do with prejudice. Nonetheless, we will watch this case as it continues.
In another case from the New York Times, the Trump administration asked a federal judge this week to dismiss a lawsuit that seeks to sharply restrict access to the abortion pill mifepristone, taking the same position as the Biden administration. This is a closely watched case. It has major implications for abortion access. The court filing by the Justice Department is striking, given that President Trump and a number of officials in his administration have forcefully opposed abortion rights.
Yet at the same time, Trump has sort of gone back and forth on this himself, right? He did appoint 3 Supreme Court justices who helped to overturn Roe v. Wade. At the same time, we tracked this for all of you on the podcast during the campaign. He sort of got a little wobbly on it, right? Because there are certainly people in the social conservative movement who want to keep getting more aggressive when it comes to abortion bans here, fight it state by state, fight other aspects of it. And Trump was like, I don't know about that, because he knows that he was going to face some issues there in regards to some voters by getting even more aggressive on abortion. So this move here by the Trump administration, again, mimicking the view of the Biden administration on this case, sort of buys them time to figure out where they stand here on the mifepristone issue on the abortion pill. Notably, they didn't mention the merits of the case. They just said, we don't believe that they have the ability to bring this case. So that's notable here. It's not suddenly an awakening within the Trump administration saying mifepristone, totally cool with us. It's also not them saying we're totally against it. It's more them saying we're going to punt for now.
And finally, to a story that begs the question, how far will you go in the name of science?
Not this far, Jill.
From the Washington Post, a Wisconsin man subjected himself to snake bites for science, and we're talking several hundred of them. Tim Freedy is a former construction and factory worker. He has allowed himself to be bitten by venomous snakes more than 200 times.
But wait, that's not all.
Those bites, along with more than 600 additional venom injections over 18 years, have put scientists on the path to a breakthrough, a potential universal antivenom.
So this is a big breakthrough, Jill. I don't know if I would have spent 18 years injecting myself with venom 600 times, getting bitten by snakes 200 plus times. And when we're talking about snakes here, we're talking about black mambas, we're talking about cobras, talking about a little bit of everything that he has allowed himself to do this. He has sort of become what they call a self-taught herpetologist. Jill, a herpetologist is the study of creeping things from the original Greek. A herpetologist in modern parlance is, the study of amphibians and reptiles. So fun fact for all of you. Not surprisingly, Jill, Freedy has said that this whole 200 snake bites, 600 venom injections has been a, quote, rocky road. Apparently, he was put in the ICU after 2 cobra bites, and then he went into a coma for a few days. He has said that he recovered. With time from that, he's become much more careful since the whole ICU cobra incident. But he does say that for him, this is about helping people from venomous snake bites worldwide. He is quoted as saying that he has an overwhelming feeling knowing that he's doing something that can change medical history here. Keep in mind, snake bites kill a lot of people, injure a lot of people globally. There's a concern with climate change that tropical disease will only get worse as snakes and more people come into contact here. And, what's interesting here is they have tested the antivenom from his body on mice, and it appears to be working. They're going to begin human studies soon. The study right now has found that the antivenom derived from his antibodies fully or partially neutralized the venom of 19 of the world's deadliest snakes. And so that is according to the latest study. Again, tens of thousands of people die of snake bites every year. And so he is very happy with the news that him giving literally his body and at times nearly his life for science has been effective. And the former construction worker is now the director of herpetology at a company called Centavax, a biotech company leading antivenom research. So, Jill, sometimes if you're looking for a career pivot, consider getting bitten by a snake 200 times. You can find yourself a new job.
Better him than me, Moshe.
You're not considering becoming a self-taught herpetologist, Jill?
No, I don't want to get bitten by a snake even once, actually.
Especially
I'll
not
pass.
on purpose.
I'll pass.
All right, now time for On This Day in History. We begin in 1945. Nazi Germany signs an unconditional surrender at Allied headquarters, ending its role in World War II. On this day in 1994, one of the more famous paintings globally, The Scream by Edvard Munch, was recovered 3 months after it was stolen from a museum in Oslo. So this is the Scream painting. You've probably seen it or seen it depicted. It's a painting from the late 19th
If you
century.
could see me, Moshe.
Jill's doing it for those of you on YouTube. Her best impression of The Scream.
That's my career pivot. I'm not going to get bitten by snakes.
Imitating artwork
I'll
is going to be, I don't think it's going to get you far. It's definitely not going to help science, Jill, but it might help our YouTube YouTube numbers for those of you who want to see her best impression.
Mona Lisa's next.
So back to the stealing of the painting. Apparently, it was stolen in about 50 seconds on the opening day of the Winter Olympics in Lillehammer in Norway. So, of course, people were distracted that day. They took it through a window of the National Gallery, and it was recovered undamaged at a hotel about 3 months later in a police operation. And those men would be convicted and sentenced in connection with the theft. But here's the crazy part of the story, Jill. 10 years later, the painting was stolen again in 2004. And they took actually 2 years to track it down the second time. Police didn't release much details about that time it was stolen, but the Scream, they got to keep it safe. They're working on it in Norway. On this day in 2000, you might know this guy. Vladimir Putin was first inaugurated as president of Russia. He is still president of Russia. Most of them not fairly conducted, Jill. He keeps winning by 70, 80% of the vote, imprisoning his opposition or, frankly, doing worse to them. We end here with a bit of music and pop culture history. The Rolling Stones released their song Painted Black on this day in 1966. The answer to our clue at the top. On this day, we checked into the Hotel California, and you can never check out. May 7th, 1977, the Eagles reached number 1 on the charts with Hotel California, inspired by the Beverly Hills Hotel. And on this day, 33 years ago, Sir Mix-a-Lot releases Baby Got Back. Classics, Jill, Painted Black, Baby Got Back, and Hotel California on this day in history.
Oh, baby. Moshe, I have seen some very funny reels on Instagram with women about my age being like, I don't remember why I walked into this room, but I know every line to Sir Mix-a-Lot, Baby Got Back. And I'm one of those women.
There are some iconic songs from the 90s, Jill, that they have a special place in your memory. You can't find your phone. You don't know whether there's milk in the fridge. Forget to pick up your kid from school, potentially. But you know, Baby Got Back.
And it's funny because I feel like I was very young and knew every line. And it's like not totally appropriate, actually. But I guess that's music for you.
Jill, it's actually funny. There's a lot of 90s songs where like we learn the lyrics as kids or sing along with them. And now when you like listen back, you're like, ooh. What I was like,
I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
I just got an Instagram reel where somebody is like actually singing along to Mariah Carey "Honey," and like if you actually, well,
what? I don't even.
Today,
I'm gonna go Google it.
No. Listen to "Honey" by Mariah Carey, and you're like, what is she actually talking about? I'll leave it there, folks.
You know, we really push the boundaries here on the Mo News podcast.
Yeah, by the time you get to the end of the podcast, it gets a little inappropriate.
If you've made it this far, anything goes. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. If you still like us after this, share this.
Yeah, they love us. They love us. By the end, the people who get it to the end, they love us. By the way, I'm Googling now, like, why we remember lyrics versus other things. And part of it has to do with the melody, that the way that, like, the words attached to a melody, that's why there's certain mnemonic devices or certain devices you use to memorize things. But doing it to a song, I guess, makes it stick for 10, 20, 30 years.
I taught my son how to spell his name Greyson. So I asked him how he spells his name, and he can only sing it. If I say, how do you say it? He's like, huh? So I guess.
Hold on, but full context, how old is Grayson?
He's 2.5.
He's 2.5. My son, he's 16. He can only sing his name.
Oh, is that weird? He's going to college next year.
All right. GOODBYE. Goodbye.
GOOD. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day.